watching South Asian Trend.
Into Community Buzz. Every week we try to bring out a local community-based issue. You watch this program on South Asian Trend every Saturday. Today we are having an extended talk about the budget. We got PC point of view, we got NDP's point of view. Today we do want to include in our programs Liberal point of view for the recently passed Ontario budget. For that, we did invite, and she very cordially accepted our invitation, Dipika Damerla MPP Mississauga. I'll let her introduce herself in full. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Varis Saab, for having me on Community Buzz. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dipika Damerla, and I'm the Member of Provincial Parliament for Mississauga East-Cooksville. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
Welcome once again. Thank you very much for coming. We are having an extended conversations about the budget. And first of all, I have to admit it on camera and say that you are one of the only MPPs that has responded to our invitation. We have invited Brampton MPPs also to come and give their point of view, but your office came along and talked to us. So I thank your staff. You are easily accessible. So let's be nice before we begin into the real talk.
Well, you know, I think it's my job and my duty to be responsible to the public. I mean, you know, when you hold an elected office, I feel very strongly, and I tell my staff as well, if anybody wants to talk to me, if anybody calls for me, anybody wants to meet with me, it's my duty, my obligation as an elected official to meet with them. So I'm absolutely happy to be here.
Thank you once again. Ontario budget, much talked about. There were big ifs in it, whether it will pass, it will not pass, and you very well know, but finally it did pass. It's a thick book. I haven't read it all. I will try during the course of the year, but I highly doubt. I'm pretty sure you are well versed with the points. Tell us what's in it.
You know, I'm going to start with something that's really interesting. So, you know, every budget has a title. I don't know if you've noticed this. Most people don't notice it. So I'm going to show this. And this one is A Prosperous and Fair Ontario. And what I did was I went back for the last 17 years because I was curious, you know, what do titles mean? Because the title tells you what this budget is about, what the government wants to accomplish.
It's sort of an outline.
Outliner. And so for 17 years, because that's what's available on the Ministry of Finance website, and I urge others to look at it as well. And there's a theme to these titles. So it's like, you know, a confident Ontario, a forward-looking Ontario, a strong economy, strong jobs. You know, those were the kinds of titles I saw, but I never once saw the word fair in 17 years. And for the first time, we have a budget that says not just a prosperous Ontario, but a fair Ontario. Because, you know, it speaks to that fundamental issue. A country can be very wealthy, but if the wealth is not evenly distributed, would you call it a prosperous country? So if just 5% of the people controlled all of the wealth, it's still a wealthy country, but the 95% are living in poverty, would you call that a truly prosperous society? So fairness is an inherent part of being a prosperous society. And I think for the first time we have a premier here who passionately believes that it's not just enough for us to have a strong economy or for Ontario to have a large GDP or export a lot, but what about how we distribute that wealth? Is it fair to the middle class? You know, so it speaks to that desire for a strong middle class. So it tells you what this budget is about just in that title.
Opposition की they started rejecting it.
Well, this is, thank you so much for bringing it up. You know, it was back in January, jabki we hadn't even finished our leadership and we didn't even have the new premier when Tim Hudak, I think, first said, I'm going to vote against the budget. And we were thinking, how can you vote against something you haven't seen? That's irresponsible. If any bill comes to me, before I vote, I need to read what the bill is about.
Absolutely, thoroughly check it out.
Yeah, that's what the people of Ontario elected us and pay us for, is to look at the issues before we vote on them in a democracy. So I was quite appalled that the leader of the opposition would be, you know, I just didn't understand. I mean, it's one thing to want to oppose a government, but it's another thing to oppose good ideas. There's a big difference. So at least look at the budget. And the interesting thing is we have a minority government. So you know what the people of Ontario have said, all three parties work together. This budget, believe it or not, does have points that were important to the NDP, but it also has a number of issues that were important to the Conservatives, because we put them in as well, because we feel it's a minority government, we have to work with all three parties together. So we put in ideas that we thought were important to the Conservatives as well, and it's been really, really disappointing that they just voted against it.
Even Andrea Harworth ka bhi to aise raha ke she was not very sure about the budget. How can they even say without a document is out that they are rejecting it or they are not willing to accept it?
You know, I think it's irresponsible.
From a voter's point of view, it doesn't seem right.
It doesn't seem right. I agree with you. And for the NDP, I think I thank them and applaud them for in the end working with us. But I think there was a bit of a dance that took place. There was a lot of uncertainty where there were times when we thought maybe we are going to go into a summer election. I think that was
that was very much in the air.
Yeah, that was needless, because you know, the NDP had asked for a few things. We said those are things we can work with you. We tried to incorporate them in the budget. But in the end, it all worked out. So I am so pleased that we saved Ontario taxpayers millions of dollars. You know, there's no, for a needless election, because the last election was only October 2011.
Let's narrow down the budget. Let's come to the real document. And the biggest issue I need to discuss living in Brampton is automobile insurance. And you very well know it is not a topic that just emerged. It has been an ongoing process. Premier McGuinty, our ex-premier, he always maintained that the reforms he has introduced for automobile insurance are going to work in the long run. But apparently, this budget doesn't agree with those statements, because you are now, by you I mean the Interior government, is now introducing a legislation that some reductions will take place in days to come. Why change of mind, change of heart? Yeah. Whereas this premier, Kathleen Wynne, she has always been a part of the McGuinty government as well. She has held a position over there. So where is the flaw here?
So I'll tell you what the real issue is. If I can just step back a minute. The fact is that in Ontario, insurance is run by private companies, right? I mean, it's a private business, but it's regulated by the government of Ontario. So the levers that the government of Ontario has in terms of telling an insurance company what the rates of insurance aren't that significant, because it is a market-based economy at the end of the day. So what that so that leaves the government a little bit of room, but not a lot of room. So what Mr. McGuinty did in his defense, what he did was he said that the main reason that auto insurance is high, not in Ontario, I want to make this very clear, it is high in urban Ontario, not in rural Ontario. And that's really important. So why is it high in urban Ontario? And one of the primary reasons is fraud. And way back when, 3-4 years ago, the government of Ontario said the root cause is fraud. Let's try and tackle it, right? And so then you're going to ask, why is fraud so high in Ontario? Why is it not high in BC or Alberta or wherever else? And I can't speak to the extent of fraud in those provinces, but what I do know is Ontario, particularly urban Ontario, is a magnet for fraud, because we have the richest accident benefits in Canada. So let me give you an example. in Ontario, if you have an accident, if you have a catastrophic accident, the benefits that you get are so much higher than in Alberta or BC, that if somebody wants to commit fraud, this is the place to commit, because our accident benefits are so rich. So what Mr. McGuinty's administration, what the Liberal government at the time did, was they actually, for what we call non-catastrophic injuries. So if you had a bit of a fender bender and you have maybe sprained your neck a little, what we call soft tissue injuries, we reduce the benefits for that. We said that if you can reduce the benefit, the premium should go down, right? Because the premium is related to the benefit. And we said that by reducing these benefits, the premiums should automatically go down. The fact is they did go down, but they did not go down in a way that was noticeable. They have gone down a little bit.
No, they didn't go down.
Actually,
not in Brampton, for sure.
Okay,
on a first-hand basis, I say.
So you're right. Probably not particularly in one geographic area, but across Ontario. So the first thing we decided to do was, let's reduce some of the rich benefits so that the premiums can go down. What we are doing now is we're kicking it up another notch. We have told the insurance companies that their internal rate of return is going to be reduced by 25%. So it's almost like telling Sears you have to cut your profits by 25%. I'm just making a broad analogy, not exactly. So by telling insurance companies that their internal rate of return is reduced, they have to reduce it by 25%. Right there, that should be passed on as a reduction in our premium. The second thing we are doing for auto fraud, which I think is really, really clever, is beginning June 1st, 2013, which is started 10 days ago. Well, now that the budget is passed, what we are saying is that if a physiotherapy clinic is billing an insurance company for, say, 6 sessions of physiotherapy, right now you, who is the
Absolutely.
Right? So now what we're doing is we're making it possible for you to get a copy of the invoice. So that you go, wait a minute, I only got 3. How is it being billed for 6? So right there, what we're trying to do is we're putting in a check and balance to reduce fraud. Now 90% of people don't commit fraud, but this way, this makes it easier for the insurance company, because you're going to call the insurance company and say, I never got that physio. Why am I getting this bill? Even though you're not paying it, right? So we're making the process more transparent. I really think that's a powerful lever in terms of the fraud that we hear about, that clinics or whatever are overbilling. That's going to, as soon as we can reduce the fraud and the claims, the premiums should come down.
Frauds and claims are one part of the deal, but let's say a kid out of college or in college, he gets a new license. Insurance companies in Brampton, and I again know it on a first-hand basis, are not willing to insure them at all.
I know.
So where do they go?
I agree with you on that.
They are already automatically assuming they'll commit fraud?
No, not fraud. But I think we need to see how these reforms work. We are saying that it should result on average, and this is really, really important. Not every single person is going to see a 15% reduction in their premium. Some people will see 20%, some people will see 8%.
What is the yardstick?
So it really depends on your own driving record. So what we've done is, overall, we've told insurance companies, reduce your internal rate of return by 25%. And we are making it harder for people to commit fraud. I gave you one example. There are 3 or 4 initiatives that we're doing. One thing that we're doing is FSCO, which is the regulating authority, is going to have more oversight powers over physiotherapy clinics, for instance, direct oversight. So the agency that regulates the insurance companies is also now going to have more oversight on the suppliers to the insurance companies, for example, a physiotherapy clinic. And I think this is really powerful, where the person who's had the accident gets a copy of the invoice. So these are some of the things we're doing to reduce fraud. When you reduce fraud, claims go down. When claims go down, your premiums have to go down.
We'll hold on to this thought. We have to go on a break. When we come back from the break, we'll still be talking about the Ontario budget. Do stay tuned.
ਵਿਆਹ ਸ਼ਾਦੀ ਦੀ ਯਾਦਗਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਫਿਲਮਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਇੱਕ ਟਰਸਟਵਰਦੀ ਨਾਮ ਪਲੈਟੀਨਮ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਕਸ਼ਨਸ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹਾਈ ਡੈਫੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਫਿਲਮਾਂ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਲੰਮਾ ਤਜਰਬਾ ਹੈ। ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਐਡਿਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਫਿਲਮ 4 ਤੋਂ 6 ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਣ ਦਾ ਵਾਅਦਾ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ ਅਤੇ ਰੇਟ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੰਪੀਟੀਟਿਵ ਹਨ। ਆਪਣੇ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਫੰਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਦੀ ਬੁਕਿੰਗ ਲਈ 416 410 8544 ਤੇ ਫੋਨ ਕਰੋ। ਪਲੈਟੀਨਮ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਕਸ਼ਨਸ।
ਵੈਲਕਮ ਬੈਕ ਟੂ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਬਜ਼। ਅਸੀਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਅੰਗਰ ਲੋਕਲ ਟੌਪਿਕਸ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨੇ ਆ। ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਇੰਟੀਰੀਅਰ ਬਜਟ ਹੈ। ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆਫ ਵਿਊ ਜਾਣਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। MPP Dipika Damerla is in our studios. Welcome back once again.
Thank you so much.
बात कर रहे थे ऑटोमोबाइल इंश्योरेंस से। I understand it is very complex, complicated and a not understandable at all topic, especially if we can't understand it fully. Just imagine about a person who is not very well educated as well. It's very complicated. In a nutshell, what is the remedy?
So in a nutshell, the remedy really is to go after the fraud, because it's the fraud that is really pushing insurance rates up in urban Ontario, especially in and around the GTA. I was just reading in the budget that between 2006 and 2010, claims in Ontario went up by $2.4 billion. Out of the $2.4 billion, $2 billion of those claims were just in the GTA. That just goes to show you how much is being claimed in the GTA, disproportionate, and a big part of it is being claimed fraudulently. So when somebody fraudulently claims from the insurance company something, the insurance company then, because it has paid out, increases its insurance, not just on the person who's committed the fraud, but on everybody else. So you and I and all of us are paying for the fraudster. So that's the key. And so this budget really has some more teeth to try and focus on the fraud. I talked about it. I think the most powerful thing is the fact that now if somebody has an accident and they're getting some treatment, they can now ask for the invoice. Even though they don't pay the invoice is paid by the insurance company. You can ask for the invoice, be a good citizen, get the invoice and say, yeah, this looks right, this is the treatment I got, so this is what's being charged to the insurance companies. So that's a really powerful way of making the system more transparent. The other thing we're doing is we're giving the financial regulators more oversight powers over people who are billing the insurance company. So I'm very hopeful. Plus we are asking insurance companies to reduce their internal rate of return by 25%. So these are 3 tools that in combination I really hope will reduce.
In the long run ये देखने में कब मिलेंगे? बोलने में तो अच्छे लगते हैं, सुनने में भी अच्छे लगते हैं, लेकिन हकीकत में ये कब होगा?
आपने बड़ी अच्छी बात छेड़ी है. Those of you who remember the I'm going to say probably the 1985 election, it was fought on auto insurance, and the NDP promised that they would bring in public auto insurance. I don't know how many of you remember. And then what happened? They didn't bring it in because they couldn't. So it's easy to promise, hard to deliver in these things. So it's really important that's why.
इधर ही रुकिए, जब आप कह रहे हैं it's easy to promise, hard to deliver, तो ये जो promises ये budget कर रहा है, ये भी ऐसे ही ना हो?
No. इसीलिए that's why it's very important that this budget has been very clear. We are saying a 15% reduction in insurance in general over an unspecified period of time. We are working on the timelines. We want to give realistic timelines. Anybody can promise we'll reduce insurance by 15% in 1 year. Promise banane mein it's not very difficult to say something, but as you said, we have to deliver. So I would be very cautious. My advice to anybody would be very cautious that let's come up with a time frame that's deliverable. Let's recognize that it is a big problem, but it's also hurting people. It's hurting you, it's hurting me, it's hurting new drivers, it's hurting people who live in the GTA. It's making driving unaffordable for a lot of people. Something has to be done, but whatever we promise has to be realistic. So we are saying we are targeting a 15% reduction in auto insurance on average, and we're going to come out with a timeline. As soon as I know the timeline, it's taking a little bit of time because we're doing our homework, come up with a reasonable timeline, and then once we have that, I'll share that with you.
Okay, let's shift the topic. I understand that. I appreciate your time and answers on this particular issue. Both the premiers, you have worked with 2 premiers now. Premier McKinty, of course, he's a legend in himself. I wish him all the luck. And Premier Wine, personality-wise, काम करने-wise, easy access-wise. I know it's a difficult answer, but आप क्या फ़र्क जानते हो दोनों में?
Both are very different people. Very different people. Premier McGuinty was, he had a way there's two lines that he said that I think really, really define him. The one thing he said was, it's not enough to be good, you have to do good. Think about it. सोचने वाली बात है. It's a simple line. He always said, it's not enough to be good. So we can all be good citizens. So हमने अपना काम कर लिया, अपने taxes भर लिए, अपने माँ बाप की देखभाल कर ली, अपने बच्चों को स्कूल भेज दिया, उनका homework करवा लिया. You're being a good citizen. But to do good, to go to the next step and do good, he always said that in caucus. He said that many, many times. And he once said to me, which really, he may not remember this, but he once said to me, Dipika, some people get into politics to be somebody, naam, sham, or whatever. But really, you have to get into politics to do something. And that's what he was about. He's a very humble man. The best thing about Ontario politics, I'm going to tell you, is that I was traveling one day, and the Premier was traveling, and he took, at security, he took off his shoes, he took off his belt, same as anybody else. You tell me how many countries in the world that the chief minister of a state or the governor, or a person in that position goes through security, just like a regular guy, takes off his or her shoes, takes off his or her belt, that's it. It tells you about the man. Politics aside, there was something about him very, very humble. Premier Wynne, oh my God, she takes humility to the next level. This is a lady that, for me the difference is, I think, a little bit that Premier McGuinty has always been Premier for me. Like, I've never known him as anything else than being Premier. With Premier Wynne, I have known her before she became a Premier as well. So in that sense, I guess I just feel like I've known her. She's always been a cabinet minister since I've known. I've always had an enormous amount of respect for her. But there's been some times when I've had the opportunity to work directly with her, and all I can say is, what a fantastic lady. I'll give you one small example. When I was the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Infrastructure, I was representing Minister Shirali because he wasn't there, and Minister Wynne was there as the Minister of Municipal Affairs. I'm just a parliamentary assistant, and she had the table, but she was so gracious to me. She treated me like an equal. I was representing Minister Shirali. It was so supportive. She was just so professional, and that just told me, here's a woman who just, she's just a wonderful, wonderful lady. You have to get to know her. She's special.
Having said that, what makes her a good Premier for Ontario?
What really makes her a good Premier for Ontario, and I'm going to tell you this, is she is authentic. There's something about her when you meet her, when you talk to her. She says things like they are. There are very few politicians who say things the way they are. And Premier Wynne, she says things the way they are. She's got that personal courage. It's a rare thing. When she says something, she means it. She's not just saying it because it's the right thing to say. She's saying it because she means it, and that comes through. And I think that's the kind of leadership we need today, because what people are looking for today, especially amidst all of the Senate scandal, there's a sense that leaders aren't living up to that high standard that they ought to be. And I think Premier Wynne is a great example of somebody who can actually a leader who you can look up to.
Having said that, from a South Asian point of view, मुझे नहीं पता कि आपको कितना मालूम होगा या नहीं होगा, सबसे सीनियर मिनिस्टर जो प्रोविंशियल के थे, आप MPP हैं, हरिंदर तक्कड़ जी, he resigned as we read because of health reasons. Is there any story behind to it, or they are apparently just health reasons?
I think I don't think there's anything extra to it. He's an inspiration to all South Asians. And he ran for Premier. He did well. He did us all proud. And I think you reach a stage and you look at yourself and you say, this is a very stressful job, to be a minister in his position. And he probably looked at it, and I know he lost his father 2 years ago, and then he lost his mother recently, and then he was very unwell as well after his mother died. So I think he must have taken stock of family, health. He has achieved so much. What else does he want to achieve? Put all that into context, and it was probably a good time for him to step down.
So basically there's no ill will, as people or the media outlets tend to believe.
No, there's nothing.
फेयरनेस की आपने बात की बजट के लिए, मैं जाने से पहले ये बात करना चाहूँगा कि फेयरनेस की बात की, Liberal Party, especially at the Ontario level, even at the federal level, has been known for its fairness towards all communities. And I'm not saying from one particular community point of view. Minorities के साथ ये premier वैसा ही relationship रखने में कामयाब हो पाएंगी जैसा McKinsey साहब का था?
Absolutely, absolutely. She is reaching out to all of the communities. You know, she took part in the Khalsa Day parade.
हाँ जी,
you know, I think she's the first premier who actually
नगर कीर्तन पे हम लोग
yeah.
इकट्ठे थे.
She walked. Then I was the Portugal Day parade. She walked the full parade. She was at that parade from 11 till about 2. How many premiers do you know who could spend 4 hours walking the full parade, waiting till the end? She's a people person. She's just, she's out there for people, and I have absolutely no doubt that she'll reach out to everybody.
जाने से पहले आप अपना एक्सपीरियंस बताएंगी कि एज ए MPP आपका ओवरऑल एक्सपीरियंस कैसा है? प्रीमियर्स के साथ तो आपने 2 के साथ काम किया, लेकिन ओवरऑल डे टू डे एक्सपीरियंस कैसा है और हमारी कम्युनिटीज़ को क्यों लिबरल पार्टी के साथ ज़्यादा जुड़ना चाहिए, जो minority communities हैं in general, and especially South Asian community?
So that's a very good question. You know, I am personally a liberal because I think it's a party that combines the understanding that you have to be fiscally responsible, that, you know, the taxpayer who is paying their taxes deserves accountability. And you know, people forget this, but the last time Ontario had a balanced budget was under a Liberal government, under the McGuinty government. We posted 2 consecutive surplus budgets, 06-07 and 07-08. Nobody remembers that. But it wasn't the Conservatives who, when the Conservatives handed over government to McGuinty, we found, I can't remember, was it a $5 billion surprise deficit? So the Conservatives who keep talking about, you know, being fiscally conservative, look at their track record. Look at Mr. Harper's track record. It was Paul Martin who balanced the books at the federal level. After Harper came, we are in deficit. It was under the McGuinty Liberals that after Mr. Harris's grand 8 years, we still had a deficit. And you know why? Because the first thing Conservatives do is they do a tax cut. But when you cut taxes, you're reducing revenue, then you borrow to spend. So, you know, it's all you're doing is you're passing the pain on to the future generations. So if you look at the record, I'm really proud that as Liberals, we have that centrist road. We have a better track record when it comes to actually managing the economy, of expanding the economy, and in managing deficits.
You are watching South Asian Trend.
अलिफ से अल्लाह, बे से
बंदूक। आज़ादी मनाओ सिर्फ 2 रुपए में।
क्या बेच रहे?
आज़ादी मनाओ सिर्फ 2 रुपए में।
अपनी अपनी बारी में है।
आज़ादी की इतनी बड़ी कीमत तो दे दी है, बनाने के लिए भी पैसे देंगे।
यहाँ लोग मेरे हिसाब से चलते हैं।
क्या करे, चलो
पकड़ा गया तो मार देंगे वो लोग उसे।
अहमद किधर है?
बुज़दिल हो तुम।
कुछ नहीं होगा तुझे।
क्यों अपनी जान के दुश्मन बन गए तुम?
बच्चों के लिए कौन लड़ता है?
जल्दी आ जाइएगा।
क्या कुछ कर डाला उन्होंने निगरानी के साथ।
तुम भी साथ चली जाओ ना, ध्यान बढ़ जाएगा तुम्हारा।
मुझे अपना ध्यान नहीं बांटना। Will you come with me?
कहाँ?
खुदा की बस्ती।
हम गंदुम के लिए दिन रात मेहनत करते हैं और हम अपना हक लेकर रहेंगे।
वो खान है, खुदा नहीं है।
It is never that straightforward.
When is politics ever straightforward?
इस्लाम की मिल्कियत है।
जंग लड़ने के लिए सिर्फ अकल की नहीं,
I don't think you should go there anymore.
जुर्रत की भी जरूरत पड़ती है। गुर्बत और बेबसी का हरगिज ये मतलब नहीं है कि सांस लेने के लिए भी परमिशन मांगी जाए। आज खुदा की बस्ती में एक ही नारा है, इंसाफ हमारा हो।